Hi guys, welcome back to Steve Basinger Fishing. I know it's kind of been a while. I know I'm not putting videos out that much, but I'm in hunt mode. I'm actually about to go hunting here just as soon as I'm done with this video, but I wanted to cover some jerkbait stuff. The last video or two, I did really good on a jerkbait, and I've had a lot of guys asking specifically about my setups, you know, what I like in a jerkbait, and it's made me realize how many folks don't actually really have a lot of confidence in a jerkbait, which is kind of surprising. But I guess the more I think on it, it's not really. It is something. It's definitely not a bait you just pick up like a chatterbait. You know, you pick up a chatterbait, you just cast it out, reel it in, and you're going to catch them. Jerkbait definitely takes a little more practice to gain some confidence in it. So we're going to go over some of that. But quick disclaimer. The stuff that I'm going to talk about in this video, like some of this stuff you're probably going to hear before in other videos, but there are some things that I'm going to talk about that I don't know that I'm the only person that does it, but I'm the only person I know that does it. So hopefully some of that stuff can kind of help you guys out. But before we get into the baits, let's talk about the setups. That seems to be what most people care about the most. So I use two. I've got two setups I use. Primarily, the rod that I'm using is a Denali Lithium series, and this is a jerkbait rod. It's a 6 foot 8 inch medium action. Now, you know, this is not a plug for Denali. You can use this as a baseline for when you do go pick out rods. What I say you want to look for a jerkbait specific rod, and this is something you want to be real specific on your tackle. You want one that is light, like light as far as like light to hold, not necessarily light action. A shorter butt section that really helps out when you are actually twitching this bait all day. It's amazing how much that smaller butt section actually, you know, helps you on that wear and tear. And then you want it to be very flimsy. Really hope you guys can see it, but you probably can't because it's a fisheye lens and that's how GoPros work. But this rod bends a really long ways down. I mean, a really long ways. And I'll be honest, when I first bought this rod, I was not impressed when I first picked it up. I thought, you know, I'm gonna lose a lot of fish on this. It's not gonna drive hooks in. I just overall didn't like how soft of an action it was. But what I've since learned, I love this rod. I don't lose fish on this thing. I mean, if you have sticky sharp hooks, you know, and you don't want them to be too thick, we'll get into that here in a little bit, but sharp hooks, you let this rod work for you. I don't lose fish on this thing whenever I set the hook. I mean, you guys will see it in other videos, or maybe if I throw that in this video, I just kind of lean into them. It's not like jacking them like you're, you know, trying to cross their eyes with a jig. It's really, you know, just like any other bait, whether, you know, a crankbait, you just kind of lean into them, you know. This soft action of the rod, it doesn't lose them. It does a really good job. And then the reel is a loose speed spool. What is this one? Yeah, this is a mock speed spool. It's actually one of their cheap ones. I want to say it's like a $79 reel, something like that. It's a 6/8 1. I don't think the reel and the gear ratio are all that important. I think as long as it casts smoothly, you know, as long as you can get the bait out there long ways, because long casts are one of the most important things with the jerkbait. But it's your gear ratio isn't necessarily that important. All that's important with it is that you're not taking up too much line too fast, because when you jerk this thing, you want to pop it with slack in your line. If that's what allows the bait to like really dance this way and then dance that way. You know, if you're pulling it with slack or with no slack in your line, it's kind of just going straight the whole time, and you're just not going to get bites that way, or not like you should. For line, which I need to retie this one, I use Seaguar Red Label, which is fluorocarbon, and I try to keep it between 10 to maybe 14 at a max. I'm probably throwing 12 most of the time. On a rare occasion I may go with 8 to get it deeper, but not anymore. I just go with the deeper diving jerkbait. So that's my primary setup, but I've got to where I like to have 2 jerkbaits tied on at most times, again, to cover the depth zones. So my other one, another Denali, this is a Denali ATAX, and this is their smaller or I'm sorry, their cheaper lineup. But this is another one. This is a 7-foot, but another medium action. Again, really light rod. The butt section is a little bit longer, not a lot, but a little bit longer. It's actually a little longer than I'd like, but I mean, 1.5 inches, we won't get upset about that. But exact same reel, exact same line. In this case, I just went with a deeper jerk bait, and you know, we'll get into those baits here in just a second. So one of the things I really want to get across to you guys, like I was just talking about, was twitching this thing on a slack line. You watch a guy like Kevin Van Dam fish a jerkbait, he really jerks the fire out of that thing. I'm not quite that aggressive with it. I'm probably going from rods parallel to the water to jerk down, where he's going crazy. You got to watch some of his videos, it's pretty impressive. But when I'm retrieving it, you know, reeling your line in is, you're not retrieving it with the reel. You're just using that to pick up slack. That's why I think the gear ratio is not that important, as long as you're not picking up too much slack at a time. So, you know, it's a twitch and reel kind of thing. Okay, now getting into baits. I keep a number of different kinds, different brands, different depths, different colors, which is not something I do with a lot of my tackle. I try to keep everything, you know, real simple and base colors, or base sizes for that matter. But with jerk baits, I've learned over the years you do need some variance to it. So we've got this one's my favorite to throw most of the time. This is a Skirmish Baits Aim 9. I like it when the water is warmer. And by the way, I throw a jerk bait, I'm going to say 12 months out of the year, but I live somewhere where the water freezes for months at a time. So whenever the water is not frozen, I throw a jerk bait the whole time. However, this one I like when the water is warm, you know, so dead of the summer, late spring, and then some situations when it is really, really cold, right? If you've ever been on, like, we don't have shad here where I live in Nebraska, but on shad lakes, when they get a really, really cold snap in the winter, you get a shad die off. And if you've ever seen those shad swim when they're dying, you know, they'll swim really quick, and then they'll start sinking back down as they're dying, and they'll sink really slow tail first. Well, as much as I love this jerk bait, I've never had one suspend perfectly. They sink really, really slow, and I'm talking like slow enough that you got to stare at it for a while to watch that it's sinking. But I actually like that when it gets to that time when the water gets, so when you get that really bad cold snap and you got a lot of shad dying, because this sinks just like shad that are dying. And I think that's really key when you get to that time of year and those shad start dying like that. So that's one I like. Another one, and this is my old, I say it's my old trusty, the only double-digit bass I ever caught in my life came on a Smithwick Rogue. And until just a few months ago, I hadn't owned any of these in years. I'd stopped buying them because the biggest reason is they cast about as well as a wet leaf. They are not easy to cast, and this one is like this is the Elite 8. This is a half-ounce version. It's still hard to cast. It casts better than the original ones, but it's still not great. But I like this one when the water is really, really, really cold. The Smithwick Rogue has something very unique to it in the way it rolls on its retrieve. I don't know if it just has this lazy appearance. I really don't know how to describe it, but that roll seems to just do really, really well when the water's cold. And then, like everybody out there, I've got a few mega bass versions. This is their 110 plus 2. I actually haven't played with this one much. I only got it because I didn't have any jerkbait that went that deep. I haven't caught a fish on it yet. I've caught the bottom a ton of times though. It didn't catch the bottom really well. However, I haven't had a chance to use it where I think it's going to actually do any good yet. I haven't used it in the right situation, I guess is what I'm saying. But again, it's good to have a variations of depths and sizes. So then let's talk about color. When it comes to jerkbaits, I think color is very important. I don't think color is that important when we're talking about, you know, jigs or spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, a lot of times even crankbaits. I don't think the minute details in those baits, the colors in those baits is really that important. But when it comes to jerkbait fishing, I think it definitely is as the water gets very cold, as it really starts to cool off. So, and I think that's because it suspends and they can stare at it, right? So what I've started to find, especially here in the Midwest where we don't have shad, the bass eat crawfish, they eat bluegill, and they eat crappie. And you know, and then various other things that they can just so happen to find, minnows, frogs, whatever. But, you know, we're talking about cold water here, right? This is a crappie color. And if any of you guys live in the Midwest, and heck, even if you live places where people catch them on a jerkbait and you have shad, you might pick you up a crappie color. Again, this is at Skirmish Aim 9. These are all hand painted, so I at least know you can get a crappie color there. It's not a color I've seen a lot of anywhere else. It's got me a lot of bites, especially this fall. It has got me a lot of bites. And I think the reason that they like a crappie color is because when all they have is crappie and bluegill, I think they'd rather eat a crappie. Crappie aren't quite as spiny as bluegill. You know, they're not going to, they're not as hard to eat. And you think about it, crappie, you know, they're always suspended. They don't get down on the bottom. A bluegill will get down on the bottom sometimes, but crappie, they're always suspended. And that's what this does. You know, you're not going to dredge the bottom with this thing. You're going to jerk it along and it's going to stay and suspend. So it acts a lot like a crappie too. So as we talk about colors, when I say like a wide range of colors, like, you know, so we've got that crappie color, right? Then we've got like a table rock shad color. I've got translucent stuff with some chrome in it, and they even like your clown colors. You're going to want all these because even on the same lake, they can all be good on different days. And so the crappie one I went into detail on, that one, you know, makes more sense. But I've noticed like cloudy days, you're more, I don't know what the name of this is, what word I'm trying to use, but anyways, your maybe your matte colors, I don't know. Your colors like this one where it's not translucent, you can't see through it, your solid colors, there you go, they seem to work better on cloudy days, whereas your translucent colors seem to work much better on the sunny days in clearer water. If you got dirtier water, you got stain. So like if any of you guys fish in Oklahoma much, typically got dirty water there, minus maybe like 10 killer, and that's probably about it. Broken bow maybe. Colors like this will work all the time. This one, and especially that clown works all the time there. And then on sunny days, right? I said I like sunny days in clear water, I like translucent. Well, caveat to that, sometimes the chrome seems to work really well. I think that goes straight up into how aggressive they are. When they're not all that aggressive, that's when the translucent seems to work really well. Those are the ones when the bites that I get, you know, I don't ever feel the bite. I just seen the line move or something like that. But when they're willing to jerk the rod out of your hand, that's when this chrome comes into play. And if you ever see like a spinnerbait or something in shallow, clear water, you can see like all the flash that it puts out. This is the same way. It just throws a ton of sunlight all over the place. It just flashes like crazy. And that will make them react. This is a way where color makes them react. So let's talk about retrieves a little bit. As the water cools, I tend to slow down more and more. That just seems obvious, right? You do that with everything. You do it with a jig, you do it with a crankbait, you do it with everything. Jerkbait's no different. However, with the jerkbait, the slower retrieve turns into longer pauses, right? So in the dead of summer, which is when I like this one, this one casts like a bullet and I can jerk it like crazy and it dances all over the place. I can fish it really fast. A long pause with this in the summer might be a second. I probably won't pause it any longer than that. It's just fish it as fast as I can, pretty much. But then as fall gets here, water starts cooling. I don't really want to say a water temperature. I mean, really, you can kind of just tell, you know, your leaves are changing really good. There's just not as much action and happen in real shallow water anymore. Those are just my kind of signs. I really don't go off of water temperature. That's when I really start slowing down and I start going to your jerk baits that just suspend even better. And then, you know, my pauses may go 3 seconds and then 5 seconds. And now listen, if my pause goes longer than 10 seconds, I'm probably not going to fish a jerkbait anymore. I am not the kind of person that can fish a jerkbait that slow. But what I want to get at is when you're working that jerkbait and it's getting that slow, it's very important to watch your line. And this also goes back to that whole working the bait with slack line. You pop that rod and then you point it back at the lure and then you watch that line. A lot of the bites you're going to get, you're never going to feel a thing. You're not going to feel them hit the lure or anything. They're not going to take it away from you. You're going to see your line hop, right? So if any of you guys have been, you know, if you're into flipping or anything like that, same kind of concept. You're going to see the strike. You're probably not going to feel it. This time of year, it gets to where most of my bites that I get with a jerkbait, I either see the line jump, or when I go to twitch it again, it's just heavy. You know, like actually a couple weeks ago, I was out and I think my first 4 or 5 bites, I didn't even know it was a fish. I thought I was dragging bottom or a leaf or something. And then when I just pulled on it harder, it pulled back. So sometimes it's even hard for me to tell. But remember, watch that line, watch the strikes, and then that leads me into the hooks. It's getting a little chilly out here. You want sticky sharp hooks, and you want to check them often too. The reason you want that is a lot of these bites you're going to get, especially as the water gets colder, recurring theme here, right? Especially as the water gets colder, they're not going to just eat this thing. They're going to come up and bump it. You know, you'll get a lot of them where you just got them in the top of the head or in the side, or I snagged one in the tail, and not the tail fin, it's the anal fin, I believe is what that's called. The fin at their butt. I snagged one of those in that the other day, where they're not really trying to eat it, but they just come up and kind of slap at it. That's where you need those sticky sharp hooks. If you're going along with some old jerkbait that the hooks have been on there since 1967, you're not going to catch them. You're just not. You're going to miss a lot of them. You need good quality sharp hooks. I actually change mine out every couple trips, or if I'm really catching them on it that day, I might change them out, you know, a couple times throughout the day. I check them all day. I always keep a hook file, hook sharpener in the boat to touch them up if I feel like that needs to happen. But it's really, really important. And then with those hooks, you want some very thin ones. So the ones on the Mega Bass, they are very thin. Like if you catch enough fish on these, you will see them straighten out. I noticed that, you know, it's not on this one actually, it was on this one. You might have some of these hooks that are still straightened out. This is the one I was catching them on when I was out last time, and yeah, they're still kind of straightened. I kind of fixed them with pliers, but they're very thin. They're very thin hooks, which means they're not super strong, but because they're so thin, it's very easy to get a hook in a fish or your hand, like I almost just did. And again, that all goes back to how much they'll just slap at the bait and allowing you to just really put those fish in the boat. That even goes back to that soft action rod I was talking about. You got a bunch that just slap it and they don't eat it really well, and if you have too stiff of a rod, you're never going to get that fish in the boat or to the bank or in a kayak or however it is you fish, to the dock, whatever. If you have too stiff of a rod, you're just going to pull that hook out of a fish that, of these 3 treble hooks on it, you may only have 1 tiny little hook in it. You need that soft rod. It's very important. Okay, I think that's going to be about it for this, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. What I would like you to do, though, more than any of that like, subscribe business, I want to hear your opinions on jerkbait fishing. What's your favorite bait? What's your setups? What do you like? Because as much as I put this video out, I'm still not the expert. I know what I like, but I might like something else. So put it in the comments. Let me know what you think. And until the next time, hopefully soon, we'll see you guys on the water.